I've had a really fascinating look around just some of the exhibitions that are here, and I'm just so struck by what an amazing array of products and services we have to offer. And I just wish anyone who's attending today the best of luck. It's great to see you here. So I came down on the DLR this morning, and I remember my very first job when I graduated from university was in 1985, and I remember coming down to the Docklands when it was just a wasteland, kind of closed for business, waiting for something to happen. And of course the DLR was part of the catalyst that really unlocked this area. But the railway that I came on is much older than many of us assume, and I think is tribute to the fact that we are in a city that is built on innovation in transport infrastructure. So the DLR, as I know many of you will know, follows the old London and Blackwall line, which was opened in 1840. And John Betjeman, to whom I know the railway owes a huge vote of thanks, used the line before it was converted to freight only in 1926 and travelled on near empty trains rumbling through the far reaches of London. And he wrote when he got to Blackwall, the terminus, "When one emerged, there was nothing to see but a cobbled quay and a vast stretch of wind-whipped water." And my goodness, anyone who has a moment to step outside the hall and look around and just see how different it is today and see the plans for this part of London will see what an incredible transformation transport investment in this part of London has made. And I think it's a really nice, tangible proof of the power of rail and also the power of road investment to transform places, to transform local economies, and to give so many more opportunities to people as they go about their daily lives. And I think that to me is part of why we're here today. My government, probably belatedly, I think few governments over the last 50 years, in my view, have invested enough in infrastructure. But I think we have realised that you can't grow a local, regional or national economy without first investing in transport, moving people to and from work, moving products around the country, and I'll say a bit more about why I think rail is the way to go. But I wanted to cover really three themes today before I took some questions. First is to set out the context of why we're here and the expectations now that are being raised right across the UK about delivery, or as I like to call it, no more jam tomorrow. Second is I want to talk about the challenge of skills. I've heard today from many exhibitors about how they are hiring apprentices, how they're investing in their businesses, but how we are dealing with a skill shortage in the country that is applying particularly across the infrastructure space and what we can do to solve that. And lastly, I want to talk about something many of you will know I'm passionate about, which is the opportunity for Britain to export off the back of the investments we're making and off the incredible innovation that we can see in the room today. Britain invented the railway, has been the protector of much of our railway heritage, and I want us to take this level of public-private investment and partnership and be part of that global movement that makes rail the 21st century transport system. So starting off with no more jam tomorrow, one of the great privileges of my job, and I'm sure many of you agree with me that I actually do have the best job in government, but part of the privileges is serving in a government that really is investing in and understanding the value of railway in delivering economic growth. And I know you probably can recite these facts, but they do bear repeating. In this Parliament, we are spending £38 billion on the enhancement and maintenance of our existing network, building new stations right across the country, refurbishing stations, sometimes that open actually without fanfare. I mean, Blackfriars Station to me is both a beautiful station, it is one where 50% of its power supply is self-generated from the solar panels on its roof, and it's a vital part of the Thameslink programme, and yet it kind of opened without trace. Reading Station the same, an astonishing piece of infrastructure work with a wonderful station built on top. Manchester Victoria, Birmingham New Street and London Bridge, which will be hopefully a price worth paying for some of the disruption that has been caused, and I'll touch on that theme in a moment. We're electrifying over 850 miles of track. We're bringing in thousands of new train carriages into service. We're completing Crossrail, which I was proud to announce will be called the Elizabeth Line from 2018. And next year we start the building of HS2, the biggest rail construction project for over a century. Given the green light to HS3, I mean, anyone who doubts the need for rail investment, just think about the journey time between Manchester and Leeds, cities that are tens of miles apart, but where it is much faster to drive. It's a situation that we absolutely have to change. And we will commission Crossrail 2 to add in the sort of north, south, east, west connectivity that London needs. So this is a railway plan, an investment plan that we haven't seen at this scale since the railway building heydays of the Victorian era. And the rationale behind this spending is clear. First of all, I mentioned the economic uplift that this brings. But secondly, the railways have been attracting customers since the days of privatisation at a rate that couldn't be imagined in the days of British Rail. You know, when railway was privatised, it was considered a declining industry. It was something only people that couldn't afford a car would travel on. And since then, passenger numbers have doubled. And frankly, investment has not kept pace. So I think we are both playing catch-up on behalf of customers with the investment programme, but also investing for the future. We have more people now travelling on our railways than at any point since the 1920s, when we had a much more substantial network, and that demand seems to grow inexorably. And I think the investments that we're making really do deserve some thanks. First of all, the whole of the rail industry is working at an incredible pace to deliver these improvements. We are working north, south, east and west of the country right now, and that's not just the customer-facing bits of the railway, but the very long supply chain, many of whom are represented here today, the cable makers, the steel manufacturers, the concrete manufacturers, the people who are putting in station platform innovation. This is a fantastic supply chain, and one that is required in order to build on this long-term growth. So the fact that the government is investing record sums in rail whilst balancing the government's national books is proof of the confidence we have in your industry. And when I toured the stands today, I was blown away by the optimism, the innovation, the can-do attitude, the competitiveness that's out there. And I think we absolutely need that sense of purpose, because expectations now have really never been higher. We are now expected to deliver on the promises, to electrify the 850 miles of track whilst completing Crossrail, whilst getting HS2 to spades in the ground, and whilst maintaining and sustaining the current network. And when you combine massive investment programmes with unprecedented customer demand, you're going to get disruption. And I have seen that firsthand. Many of you will know I've taken a really personal interest in some of the biggest construction projects we have going on, because it's been really difficult to maintain service standards while the investment is being delivered. And I think there are so many lessons to learn for the next phase of investment from that, but ultimately I don't think we've thought enough about what journeys look like from the customer point of view. So I was in London Bridge Station a few months ago when things were not as running as smooth as they should, and a gentleman approached me, could have been anyone in the room, almost in tears at the failure of the system to deliver a train that would get him home to pick up his kids from the childminder. And he said, "Why are you doing this to me? I keep hearing that I might be able to take a train from Cambridge to Gatwick. I just want to get home on time." And that has stayed with me ever since, that whilst we are making these incredible investments, we're doing investments in the system we should all be proud of, fundamentally it's the millions of people who are choosing to take the train every day, who have to be at the heart and soul of everything that we do. And there is no magic bullet, there's no panacea of customer service improvement. I see the companies who are running trains and Network Rail working so much more closely together and really improving the system. But it's just grinding out the daily things day after day, making sure that we have working assets, making sure the points are heated so that trains can get out of the depot on time. We're getting there. The work that Peter Hendy has done since he joined Network Rail, I think, has been incredible. The Nicholas Shaw's report, which many of you will have seen, is something that we're considering very carefully. And we're changing the franchising process so that operators who want to run a rail service are going to be judged on the outcomes they deliver, the service outcomes for customers and how well those customers feel they are being treated and how they get there, whether it's more frequent services, whether it's onboard Wi-Fi, something we're rolling out right across the country by 2018, better the customer information. That's all part of the mix, but fundamentally we want an incredibly reliable right-time railway and happy rail customers who want to spend more of their money travelling on trains. Which brings me to the second challenge, because the problem we all know, and it's both in rail, it's in water, it's in road infrastructure, it's in construction, is we haven't got enough people with the skills we need to deliver all of this investment. We're going to need thousands more skilled rail professionals over the next few years. We've estimated 10,000 new engineers required for the improvements to the existing network, and HS2 to need 25,000 employees during construction and 3,000 working during operation. But as things stand today, part of the rail industry will lose half the staff due to retirement within the next 15 years. And the Rail Supply Group, I know, are working together, have done some amazing work on this, but they have already estimated that the skill shortage is already driving up costs and delaying project and costing the taxpayers over £350 million a year. And without action, that is only going to get worse. So where I and the government can help, we will. I opened the National Training Academy for Rail in Northampton last October. Next year we'll be opening the National College for High-Speed Rail in Birmingham and Doncaster. And in January we launched a plan to create 30,000 new transport apprentices with this backing. For every new government transport project, we want either one apprentice to be hired for every £3 to £5 million spent on the project, or for every 200 people employed under the contract, 5 apprentices to be created every year. And whether they're employed by the big prime contractors or the SMEs who are part of the supply chain, all of that counts towards the target. And we hope that will give industry some incentive to really think about investing in their supplies. But if I may just talk about one area where I think we have a real untapped potential, it is the 50% of the workforce of the parliamentary population which I represent, the women. It's no secret that the rail sector is not hiring or promoting sufficient numbers of women. We make up 51% of the population, 47% of the workforce, 17% of the rail industry, 4% of railway engineers and 5% of train drivers. So the government set a target to increase the number of women in transport to get up to the level of women's participation at work in the national economy. And look, there are millions of women out there who, like me, left the workforce when they had their kids and, unlike me, never came back. One of the systems that is working incredibly well in other industries is to get out there and look for those women, to get them to return to work, to bring back the skills and attributes that they have. And we've suggested that transport companies run some of those returnship programs to really go after that resource. I was incredibly impressed with the work that Crossrail has done. Crossrail has done many things and is a wonderful project which actually has positioned us as world leaders in soft ground tunnelling. But it's also got 30% of the 10,000 people working on it as women. And of those taking part in the work experience, 25% of them have been women. Women make up 25% of their graduate programme. And I think it is the level of flexibility and diversity that women have brought to that project, which is one of the reasons why that project is being delivered on time and on budget, and without a huge amount of animosity from local neighbours who have potentially suffered some disruption. So please go out there and help us solve this skill shortage creatively and think about ways to bring back some talents the industry may have lost. And the final thing I wanted to mention was the opportunity for exports. If we get this right, the opportunities for UK Transport PLC are huge. We'll create a 21st century railway that the country needs so badly. We'll create a lasting skills legacy. But more importantly, I want to succeed in one task, which is to make the UK a major rail exporting nation once more. Now, I was in Dubai a few weeks ago. I have many other trips planned, and I'm so struck by how many countries, despite their own economic pressures, despite the oil price, remain committed to their transport investments. We are not the only country to think of rail as the 21st century transport solution. And next year, the value of the world rail market will reach £128 billion. Now, it's great, and I welcome all the international companies who are exhibiting here today. There's almost 30 international rail firms, and of course, our doors are open for business. And we do need international firms' perspective, innovation, and expertise. But we also want the trade going the other way too. And I will challenge the British companies in the room to say that we are perhaps not doing as well as we could. Rail exports are now worth £400 million a year, and I'm so pleased to see so many SMEs who are here today who have built a fantastic export portfolio. But that figure is nowhere near what it could be if you benchmark us against some of our closest European neighbours. And look, as the nation that invented the railway, we've got to up our game. The government is giving the industry more subsidy, more investment than I think at any time in the last 100 years. That's taxpayers' money, all of our money going to work. And I want to see some of that investment, all of that drive, really driving through some exports and innovation as well. And we have so much to be proud of. Our rail network is one of the safest in Europe. It's one of the most intensively used. We have organisations like TfL who have delivered innovation in smart ticketing and crowd management that other systems can only dream of. And in Crossrail, we have Europe's biggest and most ambitious construction project delivered on budget and on time. I think we lead the world in railway planning, design and project delivery. We have commercial and legal services, engineering and design, transport strategy companies, all of whom are delivering world-class solutions. In asset management, UK standards set the international benchmark, and we're about to become a leading nation in high-speed rail. So in recent months, I've been to Krakow in Poland, where I met many of you. I've been out to Dubai. I'm off to Japan in a couple of months, and I'm coming out to Germany in September. And it's great to see so many British companies coming along to those rail fairs, those rail export opportunities, and really banging the drum. And actually, in Krakow, we had 30 UK companies who were looking for opportunities in Eastern Europe. We know that senior representatives from Rail Baltica, which is a vital project both for economic and actually for security reasons, to build the railway from Berlin across Poland up to Estonia. And those representatives will be here tomorrow, looking at ways British companies can help them. So we have a plan for the rail industry to double exports within the next 9 years. The government is there to support you. There is unprecedented work being done by UKTI, and we really want to get that trade deficit moving in the opposite direction. So in conclusion, when John Betjeman, to whom I think we owe, every time I go past St Pancras, I thank my lucky stars that he did what he did for that station. But his affection for the railway, I think, was based partly on nostalgia, on looking back to a golden age. And, you know, we love our heritage railways. I was proud to launch the £1 million competition only a few weeks ago, focused on heritage and community railways to see how they can improve their offer to tourists. And of course, nostalgia has its place. And frankly, in the lean years, back before privatisation, it sometimes felt like nostalgia was the only thing keeping our railways going. That, and if you happen to have the chairman of British Rail living close to a station that was saved from closure. But I believe the time for nostalgia is over. We should be motivated by something far more powerful than nostalgia, and that's anticipation. Anticipation that comes from plans for the industry, a record investment, a focus on innovation, the prospect of opening up a whole new generation's eyes to the excitement and opportunity of working in the railways. And yes, the anticipation of UK rail brilliance being exported all over the world again. It's not jam tomorrow, it's jam today in Britain. We're all working for the transport industry of the future, and I am proud that we are one of the best placed countries to seize that opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. I was very interested to hear you mention the hard work being done by Sir Peter Hendy as Chairman of Network Rail and author of the Hendy Report, because of course he's our keynote speaker here tomorrow. So I hope you'll stick around for that, those of you who are coming on more than one day. We do literally have time for about 2 questions, so if anyone has a question, we have a microphone at the back of the room, and if anybody wants to wave an arm and let us know if you'd like to ask the Minister a question. You don't... Please, if you just tell us who you are, sir, and then ask a question.
Okay, I'm Steve Lloyd, I work for Network Rail. I'm also a commuter and I read Rail magazine regularly. I guess my question's around fare rises and the use of RPI rather than CPI, which is the target and index used by government departments for virtually everything else except for rail fare rises. Can we move to CPI, please?
You're not the first to raise that. It's also used for government bonds, pension indexation. RPI has been the measure right across government for many, many kind of contractual obligations, and government's looking across the board actually at whether there should be a move to it. But let's see, whether it's RPI or CPI, the thing I was determined to do was not to add inflation busting rises onto that. So we've frozen your season tickets and everybody else's for the duration of this Parliament at RPI plus 0, and on average that's worth more than 400 quid a year to season ticket holders. And I have to say, I know we're not focused on operations, but I think rail season ticket holders are the frequent flyers of the industry and should be treasured for spending that much money every year. And one of the things Pete Wilkinson and I are bound and determined to do through the franchising process is to make sure that you get the service you deserve.